Well, welcome everybody. How did we get to term 4? I have no idea. Well, I just want to say, I know it's term 4. Well done. You've made it. But I always find term 4 is such a fast term and there's so much to do. But at the same time, it's a great time to stop and reflect. Personally, I always take the end of term 3 to look at the feedback from the year, start to think about next year, think about how I can help you best in term 4. And at my live virtual workshops, I always ask people to send what is their biggest challenge and what have they tried. I also do this when I go into schools, when I do professional learning in schools. I normally do a activity like what are 3 things that are working, what are your biggest challenges? And what I'm finding over and over again is people are saying behavior. That might look like meltdowns, aggression. It might look like not attending school. There are so many ways. Behavior is a big word, right? It encompasses a lot of things. So I thought, well, I think term 4 is the perfect time to focus on behavior because the strategies you're going to learn from me around behavior, about understanding behavior, about helping children regulate their emotions, all of these things, actually, you're going to use forever. People often come to my workshops and go, Sue, I saw you 10 years ago and I've been using your stuff all the time. And when I think about it, really, for most of you, the information you require is what I teach in my full day course, my step-by-step course, where I really break it down, slow it down, proactive, reactive. But you can put in place every proactive strategy you know. But at the end of the day, the child needs to self-regulate. One of my favorite sayings that I say at my workshops is, never in the history of calming down has anybody ever calmed down. It's so important that you remember that we need to put in place strategies to help the child calm, but then they need to access those strategies. So this term, I'm really going to focus on behavior. Can you do me a favor? Make sure you're getting my emails. I've already sent out a few warm-up ideas around behavior, about using the Red Beast workbook, a fantastic new picture book called The Mindful Magician, and that included even how to make a fantastic class display for your students. So I'm going to be looking through the lens of behavior and understanding behavior and putting in place behavior solutions for you, because the truth is, whether you're a teacher, teacher assistant, parent, educator, whatever age or stage, we all need to help children with behavior and helping put in place solutions for all those different stages. So if you have come to my workshops, the ebook I'm about to refer to is a really good reminder of what you learnt about veneer of coping, meltdowns, shutdowns, about what it looks like, what to do, the 3 phases of meltdowns. And if you haven't done mine or Tony Attwood's workshops, I would actually recommend you do it this term, because if you're not now, when? Seriously. So how can you learn? You can learn online on demand with myself or Tony. You can just watch it at home. People tell me they literally binge watch it in a couple of days. And because it's Tony is so easy to listen to, and people would say my course is so practical that it's easy to listen to. So I recommend you look at that. If you're like, Sue, I'm not an online person, I've got so many courses I haven't done, then join me in November for the live virtual workshops. I've got 2, one on a Wednesday, one on a Friday. Join me for one of those. And they get as good evaluation as my face-to-face or my online on demand, because it depends on your learning style. So I've got you covered, okay? So I highly recommend you do that. And my new revised and updated emotional regulation course. It's a 3-hour course. It includes a massive folder full of all the activities to do. Anyway, you'll hear more about that throughout this podcast, but I highly recommend you think about looking at step-by-step understanding meltdowns, tantrums, veneer of coping. What are these things, what to do? Because you cannot help a child regulate the emotions unless you understand. So I would love you to download the ebook that goes with this episode. It's an amazing summary. I used to only give it to my graduates, but I was like, how can I help you best? And I actually think that ebook, put it on your phone, put it on your iPad, print it out, share it with staff. It should be a book. I really should sell it because that's why I used to make it for my graduates, because I felt people who had paid to come to a course deserve that next level. But I now feel like you all need it, and my job is always to support you. So I'm not charging you for it. Make sure you download it. You would have got it in your emails this week. So remember, go to your emails. If you didn't get an email from me, it means I'm probably going to your spam, and check with your email provider how you whitelist me, say that I'm okay, that I'm not a spammer. And the reason I end up in your spam is because I send you things every week. And also make sure you got that Mindful Magician fantastic wand and activity to do. I'm really excited about that book. It's a Lauren Bruckner book, and she came on the podcast to share about it. And then I've created these fun activities to make a display as a whole class, and I can't wait to see how you are going to put that together. So the next part of the term is about preparing for next year, because we would not send a miner down a mine without actually preparing them. And I believe transition is about preparing the child, the teacher assistants, and the family. Families, Christmas is an anxious time for your children, and you need to know where the child's going and what's happening. So I've got a free live webinar on Wednesday, the 1st of November. Pop it in your diary now. And it's just an hour of power looking at helping children transition. If you can't make it, just sign up. I'll send you the replay anyway. I'm also going to do a podcast on how to prepare children for next year. I'm going to send you all my cheat sheets rather than sending out big folders. So I've got you covered this term. But behavior so often comes from not preparing the child for the next year, but also not preparing the teacher. Just going, oh, you've got this child with autism in your class. No, let's give them the training now. Don't wait for the end of the year. So often I get schools going, oh, we've got a teacher who's got a child for the first time on the spectrum, and they wait till week 6 to give them the training because the teacher's too busy. Who wants a day out of the classroom in week 1, 2, 3, or 4 when you've got just establishing a new class? Not me. I'm not going to professional learning in the first 4 weeks of term 1. That's why I always say, prepare the teachers over summer. Get them to do mine or Tony Atwood's course over summer. I've got summer school again in December. Sign up for that. There's so many ways I can help you prepare yourself and the child. And parents, I recommend, doing as much as you can to help the child learn to regulate their emotions. So if there is a surprise or a new teacher or something changes, they have got the strategies. So I'll let my high horse run away, but I truly believe we need to prepare everybody. So the first part of this term, I'm going to focus on emotional regulation, understanding behavior solutions in our busy and complex classroom. Then I'm going to get you ready for transition. And then, dare I say, it's going to be Christmas and summer already. So I genuinely do believe that one of the best ways to prepare to understand behaviour is to put yourself in a child's shoes, to understand what it's like. I would love you, while I'm talking through different strategies, to not just listen generically, to actually put yourself in a child's shoes. Maybe think of a child who really struggles to regulate their emotions, and that looks like behaviour, of course, or a child who isn't coming to school every day, or a child you're seeing a lot of behaviour from, and think, what can I do to help that child? What can I put in place? And while listening to what's in the ebook, maybe you'll come up with some strategies and ideas. Or make sure you download the ebook and maybe share it with parents and ask, what do you see at home? What works? What doesn't work? There are lots of practical tips and strategies in the ebook, and I do recommend that you download it to go with this episode to refer back to. As always, I hope that all of these strategies make a difference to you, and that having this ebook on hand will make a difference. Please email me if you've got any behaviour, anything you need help with. I'm always here to help you. And often when you ask a question, there's someone else that needs the same help, and then I'm able to help lots of people. So enjoy the ebook, and I hope it makes a difference to you and the children you know this term. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. my passion is to create calm classrooms. And if you're a parent listening, this is really helpful for you too if you've done mine and Tony's courses. And I know I'm talking about classrooms and you might be going, well, how does that apply? Well, I do believe we need to work collaboratively, and I'd highly recommend you still download the Understanding Behaviour ebook. You think about how that applies to your child. Let the school know. For example, in there, I've got 10 things that make a child angry or anxious. Well, actually, what makes one child anxious might make another angry. Maybe you can write down 10 things that makes your child angry or anxious based on that list to help educators who often don't know your child as well as you. Well, obviously don't. You know your child much better. And that's where we have to work together on this complex behaviour. And also parents, some of this stuff you might sit there and go, oh, I've never thought of that. I can see at school why that would be really difficult. So I highly recommend parents you listen as well. But this really is just for my graduates. Now, if you're a graduate and you have not received the ebook, do not worry. Just email support through my website or email support@Sularkey, and remember it's larkey.com.au, and just say, hi, I'm a graduate. Can you send me the link to the ebook? Because it's such a big ebook, we need to send it to you as a link. Then, everybody, once you get the link to the ebook, can I please ask that you download it on your iPhone, your iPad, your device, whatever you use, Apple, Google, I don't know, all the different ones that you can use, Kindle, because you can actually just download it as a PDF and then you can refer back to it whenever you want. Or if you're like me and still like to print things out, print it out. You'll hear me rustling the pages today. I like it on my iPad because I can flick through it when I'm at the airport, but I also like it as a document so I can take notes. So up to you which way you use it, but I highly recommend you have it as a resource to use ongoing. We're getting more and more complex classrooms that everybody comes away absolutely loving the workshops, but they're like, but Sue, I've got 2 or 3 kids who are taking up all my time. What can I do? And I could not agree more. A few years ago, the New South Wales Minister for Education put out a study that said 4% of New South Wales public school kids are receiving short-term suspensions, 1.5 long-term, 3 to 20 days. And guess what? 1 in 4 are in their first 3 years of school. But the research says, of course that's going to happen because Tony Attwood's found 75% of children with autism spectrum experience intense anxiety. And George Gross, I think that's his first name. I might have made that up. But anyway, Gross, he has found that kids with ADHD, ODD and ASD have found to be a whole 3 years behind their peers. So we're asking a 7-year-old to work with a behaviour system that's made for behaviour systems for 7-year-olds when really they're like a 4-year-old. So I go into childcares and preschools. What they expect behaviourally for children regulating their emotions is very different to what we expect from a year 2. How long I expect a 4-year-old to sit still is very different to a 7-year-old. And those of you who've done my early childhood course, the 5-hour online one, will know I say, Dr. Richard Eisenmeyer says, take 2 years off their chronological age. So if they're 5, compare them to a 3-year-old as far as tantrums, meltdowns, emotional regulation. How long do you expect a 3-year-old to sit on the mat? Not a 5-year-old. But actually, Gross is saying 3 years. So I've been saying 2 years to people. And the research that came out in 2000 saying actually in 2014 says, hey, actually they're 3 years behind in their ability to inhibit and impulse control, self-reflection and self-monitoring. And what have schools moved to? Restorative justice, self-monitoring, self-regulation. But my kids are 3 years behind and we're asking them to fit in a system. So no wonder the stats say 4%. Okay, look, I don't want to go on and on, but what I want to say is this. I call myself a pracademic, which is a practical academic. I have been seeing this in schools for a number of years where the children have been asked to sit out and reflect on their behaviour and they have no idea. And in fact, often that escalates. The way I'm looking at emotional regulation is exactly like teaching reading. See, when I taught preps or receptions, kindies, whatever you are, but when I taught 5, 6, 7-year-olds, so reception year 1, year 2 when I was in Adelaide, well, guess what? Some children just learned to read. Like it was overnight. They'd go from just trying to sound words out and then it was suddenly like, boom, they could decode. Some children came into school reading. Some took 6 months. Like they all read at different ages and phases. And then most of them, it just clicked. But there was a group of kids it didn't click for. And this is where we do programs like reading recovery or whatever philosophy your school uses. But we know there are a group of kids who don't learn to read in a regular classroom with 30 other kids. We go, let's take them out as a small group and give them different strategies, give them some more help because they are not learning the same way as everyone else. I would love us to look at behaviour like that. That there are children who the current behaviour system, 4% of kids, they're the ones we know about. These aren't the kids who are just sitting out or disengaged. These are the kids who are actually suspended, not just sent to the office, not just sitting outside your room. They're actually suspended. So I'm thinking like reading recovery, there is a group of kids who our current system is not working for, and we need to address their behaviour differently. But back to me being a pracademic, teachers are telling me this. They are coming to me and going, Sue, I've done your course and Tony's. They are absolutely fantastic. Wish I'd done them 30 years ago. In fact, I just met a teacher who came up to me and said, oh my goodness, Sue, I have retired from teaching because I was exhausted by all the challenging behaviour and complex behaviour. I wish I had done your course because I think I would have stayed on teaching because this just makes sense what you're talking about. Emotional regulation course is exactly like reading recovery. So I love the saying, we are asking kids to fit a system. If kids don't learn the way we teach, maybe we have to change the way we teach. I think we need to change the way we teach behaviour, and I think we need to change the way we address behaviour, because I wonder if those 4% of kids who were suspended or had short-term out of school, not the long-term suspension, 1.5, did it work? Were they more engaged? Did they come back to school and got it? Totally just back in the classroom, because that's not what I'm seeing. Often those kids move schools, and parents listening, I don't want you to have to move schools. And I know as a classroom teacher, when I've had children move schools, it's devastating. I've often put a huge amount of effort into that child and getting to know them and supporting them. And I get really sad, even if they're moving for location reasons, the family's having to move. I'm always very sad when children leave my school or class. I get very attached. I always cry at the end of every school year too, by the way. So even though I know I'm going to see kids the next year, I love teaching. I love kids, and children who learn and engage differently, I adore. So if they leave, I get extra attachment. Some of you know me, have known me. I've known some children since they were in year 2, and I'm still following them to year 12 and university and beyond, because I'm so passionate to hear how things go and the ups and downs along the way. Anyway, sorry about that little off tangent, but back to what I want to talk about. Emotional regulation, I think, is what we need to think about. How do we help this child to regulate their emotions? So if you don't know what emotional regulation is, it simply means referring to their ability to control their thoughts, emotions, and behaviours. So resisting emotional outbursts and upsets, focusing on schoolwork. So some of my kids, their thoughts are just off somewhere else, actually being able to control their thoughts to come back. So they mightn't be a behaviour. Some of my disengaged kids aren't misbehaving, but they're not engaged either. They're just zoning out is what we think. And when you're in a classroom with 30 kids, you miss that. You miss the child disengaging. You don't know where their thoughts are. Controlling their impulses and ability to calm themselves down. But as Gross says, it's about up-regulating and down-regulating. So a kid goes out in the playground, they get really excited. Some of my kids can't refocus. They're so overexcited or laughing or giggling. And then sometimes that can end up in a meltdown or a shutdown. So it's about up-regulating and down-regulating, but also when they feel those anxious feelings or worries, are being able to regulate them. Now, Tony Attwood's saying 75% of our kids have extreme emotions of anxiety. So my guess is these kids need help with emotional regulation. And not only that, they're 3 years behind their peers. So Gosh, are you feeling a bit overwhelmed? Like, Sue, that's too much to take in. Well, I know I've spent 10 minutes telling you what the problem is, but let's dive in deep to your ebook and discuss what you can do about it, because I'm all about, okay, what are we going to do? So first of all, if you turn to page 2, Tony Attwood talks about these kids need to spend at least an hour a week from early childhood to adulthood throughout their whole life, learning to regulate their emotions. I agree with Tony. Emotional's for the whole of life. But I think we all work on emotions throughout life. But we have better structures. We have executive functioning. And executive functioning includes impulse control and all of these things. So I think we all have to work on emotions. But what Tony's talking about, which I agree when I'm teaching emotional regulation to children, it's about normalizing feelings. So many of my children catastrophize. They think they're the only person who feels this way. And that's why I think emotional literacy and emotional regulation taught as a whole class is fabulous. Like when I've had children with ODD, I often go, everyone put up your hand who thinks this is boring. Everyone put up your hand who's done this before. Everyone put up your hand who thinks this hard, who thinks it's easy. So I can then write a social script that says sometimes we do things that are boring, sometimes we do things that are hard, sometimes we do things that are easy, sometimes we do things that are done before. This is a very important social script for oppositional defiant sort of kids, because often they sit there going, this is boring, but they think they're the only one feeling that way. And I want them to see that. I'm happy to come back from an assembly and go, I could not hear what half those kids were saying in the microphone. Didn't that make that really boring and hard to not go and think your own thoughts about something else? Let's be honest with kids. Let's share our emotions, because just that, me sharing something, is actually helping their emotional literacy. Because if you've only got yourself, it's very hard to build up your skills. Just like with reading, we read to children, they read back to us. Other people read to them. Literacy is more than reading. It's about comprehension. There's so many different ways now, like reading eggs. I've got kids who have responded very well to reading eggs who were struggling with reading. I don't know if I like the word struggling, but you know what I'm saying. So I find different programs work for different kids, but part of it is them actually trying different systems. And the same with emotions. We need to talk about our emotions. I'd love you in the next 24 hours to talk to children how, I was frustrated today. I was angry today. I was upset today. Or like myself today, I've got to go and renew my license. I didn't want to do it because I didn't know how long I'd have to wait. And I hate not knowing, because you take a number, and it was frustrating because they took the photo. I don't know what's going to happen, but last time they took a photo and I wasn't allowed to smile. And, I think we need to share this with children, actually like a commentary of our emotions. Because often they only see our extreme, like yelling at someone when we're driving, or they only see the extreme. They don't see all the build-up and what we're thinking, because this is called mind blindness. So Simon Baron-Cohen is the expert on mind blindness. It's the ability to read other people's emotions and guess what their emotions would be. So children with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder all have mind blindness, from my understanding. I think it's it's part of it. Sorry, I'm not a psychologist, but most of the kids I've worked with have mind blindness. So when you ask them to sit and reflect in a school, restorative justice, and how do you think that child felt, most of my kids wouldn't know. They might give a stuck standard answer, like something they've learned to say, they were sad or upset, but they don't really understand it. And that's what I'm saying. It's like a child being able to decode a word but not understand it. So we're like providing the dictionary of emotions, because a lot of my kids only know happy, sad, angry. There's like 20 different emotions we can teach children. Okay, sorry, I'm just looking. I've already been going for like 17 minutes. There's so much I want to share. So I highly recommend you think helping children understand their emotions. So on page 3, I've got 10 common reasons children get anxious or angry. And that's what I was saying in the introduction. I'd love you to go through and think, does this make the child anxious or angry? And make a list so you know. And this information should be shared with other staff, relief staff, because for some children, getting a new teacher or a relief teacher will make them anxious. Some, they'll go straight to a meltdown and be angry. So we need to know which one it is. So I highly recommend you have a look at that. And they're just to prompt you to come up with ideas. Then page 4 is the one that I really want you to refer back as much as possible. It is 11 key questions to ask when you see a behavior. So you really need to have a look at this and really go through it for each child, because I feel like these are the key questions. And I've put this together from mine and Tony Attwood's courses. So I've come up with, okay, behavior serves a purpose. When Tony does his course and I do my course, what are the things we say can cause behavior? It might be sensory. It might be a fear of making mistakes. It might be timers. And in my course, I talk about choose your battles. And in this one, number 11 is this a battle we really need to have? So I highly recommend you use that as a reference whenever you're referring to behavior, just really going through the key questions to ask. And then I talk about, and most of you have heard me talk about this many, many times, you can't stop a behavior, you can only replace it. So remember, children with autism spectrum, ADHD, ODD, any of those labels, any neurodiverse kid, behavior serves a purpose. Everyone does behavior for a reason. So for some children, it might be sensory. For some, it might be anxiety. For some, it might be anger. So behavior serves a purpose. So you can't stop a behavior, only replace it. And those of you who've done my workshop will know I talk about how children used to have under their seat a wooden, like a stool for their feet to go on. And we've taken that away. And as a result, children replace it. And I normally go down a line and find out from teachers and educators, what have the children replaced that with? And I'll get, they're tapping their pencil, they're chewing their pencil, they're humming, they're rocking, they're swinging on their chair, they're getting up and moving, they're distracted, because we know these children are what we call kinesthetic or kinesthetic learners. So they learn best by moving. So actually, when they had that thing under their feet, they used to wriggle their legs and move their body. So now we've taken away their ability to move their body with that stool under their feet. And so they're replacing it with other behavior. So behavior serves a purpose, so you can only replace it. So then I share some things to remind you of how you can replace, like solutions to try when you see things like difficulty with small groups, covering ears, excessive laughing, fidgeting, excessive hugging, leaning against people. So there's some fun things for you to think about. Then I'd encourage you to make up your own. So think about behaviors you're seeing. What can you replace it with? And I'd encourage you to look at those 11 questions when you ask yourself, because the truth is, if the kid's chewing their pencil, choose your battles. Are they doing their work? Does it matter they're chewing their pencil? Well, yes, it might if they're chewing it down to the lead and now they've got splinters in their mouth. So let's put a pencil top on it. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes when I'm chatting away here, I think, I can't see people's faces to get feedback. Now, the most important pages of this ebook are pages 10 and then 10 to, sorry, I'm flicking through, 10 to 18 is where I spent a huge amount of energy. I got people to look at it, read it. People have done the courses, because this is all about the 3 stages of the meltdown I talk about in my course, the build up, survival, and the meltdown or shutdown. And I really laid out what it looks like, and then what you can do, ideas to try. And I haven't done this in my course, and neither did Tony, and that's why I have included page 13, your response plan. So I've got a lovely new pro forma that has the stages of a meltdown or shutdown, build up, survival, meltdown or shutdown, and a recovery plan, because a lot of people were asking for me, what do we do after? And then on page 14, on page 12, I've got some ideas of what to do after the meltdown, so the recovery. So then you can put in what it might look like for that student and strategies to try. So I would love you to use, I've really done all the thinking and hard work there. And then if you're still not sure, you can turn over, the page numbers have disappeared. I apologize, but turn to page 15 where I've done a whole page on meltdowns, sensory or behavior, possible causes, what it looks like, and strategies to try. So you can use that for your response plan. And then shutdowns. And in my course, I touch on shutdowns, but I don't go into it as deeply as I have here. But I'm getting more and more kids who are having shutdowns. Now, remember, that kid who looks like they might be just daydreaming could be having a shutdown. Many people miss the shutdown. So I'd encourage you to keep an eye on those shutdowns, because some of my students, they still the same, change of tone of voice, start asking repetitive questions, all of these things, but then they don't go to a meltdown, they go to a shutdown. And those shutdowns can go for an hour too, where you can't move them. But some of my kids, they have lots of little shutdowns during the day. People don't realize, and then they will do the veneer of coping where they hold it together at school. And if you look on page 18, I've actually put in veneer of coping. And parents, I know so many of you see this, and I think this one pager would be very valuable to talk to the school about and put in your own possible causes. But for many of my kids, it's a build up and a keeping it together at school. They've had lots of little shutdowns, and then they get home and they have this either big shutdown or big meltdown. So the veneer of coping is where you hold it together. It's like a delayed meltdown or shutdown. And I've done a whole page on tantrums too, because we all need to remember that. But remember what I said earlier? They're 3 years younger. So you might be with a 7-year-old who's having like a 4-year-old tantrum. Make sure you're comparing them to the right age. It's unrealistic. We don't ask a child who's just rolling over when they're learning to walk to go from rolling to running. I feel like that's what we're doing to our kids. We're asking them to take a huge leap behaviorally. Just like developmentally with gross motor, a child crawls, then they pull themselves up. Well, what I know with tantrums, children go through different phases with tantrums. And, with my teenagers, they sort of go back to a whole new pushing the boundaries. And I have to use that language like I'm now using with my teenage son. That's not negotiable. Well, with my little kids, I would actually, have to be very clear what the boundaries were. I'd have to remind them otherwise they'd have a tantrum. I found the clearer I was, the calmer they were and the happier they were. You sort of have to go back to that. But I'd ask that you really ask yourself, is this child in prep or reception having like a 2-year-old tantrum? Well, guess what? That probably makes sense. They still do want to be first because developmentally they're like a 2-year-old. Are they getting upset when they have to wait for a turn? Are they frustrated learning something new? Well, compare them to 2-year-olds. I think you'll find this very helpful. And if they're in year 2 and they're 7, how much handwriting would we expect a kindy to do? Probably 2 lines. Well, they might still be doing 2 lines. The amount of working memory and thought they have to put into 2 lines. So I really think this is such a good rule of thumb. And maybe what we are missing, maybe why we're getting 4% of kids suspended, expelled, or in short-term long suspensions, because we're not comparing them to their developmental age. We're using their chronological age. So look, I'm hoping that you have downloaded the book and had a good look while we were talking. I'd also encourage you to go back to my blog. If you're not sure what executive functioning is, there's a blog I wrote on what I wished I knew when I first started teaching, and it's on executive functioning. And executive functioning is like a aeroplane control tower. And those of you who have done my early childhood course, I actually show you a video on executive functioning. And if you join my course, you'll also get to rewatch that video because it's just brilliant. And it explains that other children can block out noises and can block out different things. And it's like a control tower. But executive functioning includes emotional control, impulse control, planning and prioritizing, organizing, task initiation, flexibility, and working memory. And this is what we're saying these kids are 3 years behind in. So doesn't this make sense, what we're all experiencing? Doesn't this make sense why people are saying to me, well, Sue, look, your course is great. You talk about the phases of the meltdown, but I don't see it coming because I'm in a class with 30 kids. But the truth is the child can't regulate their own emotions. What I want them to learn is, oh, I'm feeling my voice change. That means I'm getting anxious. What can I do? This is about the kids learning to do the 50-50. You're putting in place the timer, routine, structure, schedules. The kid needs to be able to regulate their own emotions. Executive functioning is a muscle. It actually is like going to the gym. It's why after the school holidays, we often see a change in behaviour, because it's like me. If I stop going to the gym for a few weeks, my fitness falls off. Well, children, when they're at home, aren't having to block out as much noise, aren't having to be so organised, aren't having to use impulse control as much unless they're in a busy house with 30 kids. So no wonder we see them change. So this is why my passion is to create calm classrooms by teaching children emotional regulation. It's about them noticing their emotions, about them noticing their impulse. It's about them feeling the anger and anxiety, about knowing in their body what that means, because so many of my kids don't know what it means. But the good thing with my emotional regulation, you can either do it with an individual, small group, or whole class. It's aimed at primary school children. So sure, if you're in secondary or if you're in a specialist school, you could adapt this stuff, particularly if you're in a special developmental school. I think you can still use this stuff. But if you're in a secondary mainstream, my guess is a lot of this is too primary orientated for you. But I'd still love you to work on emotional regulation in other ways and look what you can do. So I'm sure that actually thinking about emotional regulation, you can go, oh, okay, they are 15, but they're more like a year 7 than a year 10. You know, really think about what are we comparing? Because I don't know about you, but when I see photos of my children in year 7, they look so young compared to now in year 11 and 12. So have a look what is realistic for those kids. So I would love you to join me for my emotional regulation class if you're ready to dive in deep and learn even more about tips and strategies to help children. It is very different to my other courses. It's actually 4 modules, but Module 2 is like 14 videos and then activities to download and use with individuals, groups, or whole class. And they're actually the templates and time savers, because that's what teachers said to me. This is great, Sue, but I don't have time. The way I'd look at it, you could go and look on Pinterest. You could go and find all this stuff without a doubt, but I'm being your guide, explaining how to use it, why to use it, and then click, download, print. Now, there's 74 pages of printables. You can keep them forever. You've got 6 weeks to do the course, which people tell me is more than enough time. It's only a 3-hour course, and there's not even 3 hours of videos. That actually allows you time to make the resources and give it a go. Hope you can join me for the emotional regulation class. My absolute passion is to create calm classrooms and calm schools and make a difference to these kids. Imagine if we can get that 4% of kids not attending full-time school down to 0. Imagine that. It should be. Every child's entitled to an education. And I think most teachers don't have the time, resources, or support to make this happen. But I'm hoping my program makes it so much more accessible and you can put it in place to make a difference. So remember, embrace difference to make a difference. Any questions, please email me. I'd love to see you in the emotional regulation course. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.suelarkey.com.au.